The chaos of the emergency room always made Imani feel alive. As a trauma nurse at Mercy General Hospital, she thrived under pressure. It was where she belonged, where her quick thinking and steady hands had saved countless lives over her 8 years in the profession. Tonight was different, though. The moment the paramedics burst through the double doors, wheeling in the unconscious victim of a high-speed car crash, Imani felt an unexplainable pull toward the patient. Male, late 30s, multiple lacerations, possible internal bleeding, BP dropping fast, the paramedic rattled off as they transferred the man to the trauma bay. Dr. Patel, the attending physician, began barking orders. Type and cross for 4 units, chest x-ray, CT scan as soon as he's stable. Imani, start a central line. Imani moved with practiced efficiency, setting up the central line while assessing the patient. His expensive suit was torn and bloodied, but even in this state there was something commanding about his presence. His dark hair, now matted with blood, framed a strong-jawed face that seemed vaguely familiar. "Wait, that's Harrison Wells," whispered one of the junior nurses, "the CEO of Welltech Industries." Imani had no time for celebrity recognition. The monitor started beeping frantically. "BP's crashing, 80-40 and dropping!" Dr. Patel cursed under his breath. "We need to find the bleed. Prep for emergency surgery." But something wasn't right. Imani had seen this pattern before, and it didn't match with the trauma presentation. Acting on instinct, she checked his medical alert bracelet and saw what everyone had missed. A small inscription indicating a rare blood disorder. "Dr. Patel, he has von Willebrand disease. It's not just the trauma. His blood isn't clotting properly. We need to administer factor concentrates immediately." The doctor hesitated for just a second, then nodded. "Do it." Imani moved with lightning speed, administering the treatment while the rest of the team worked to stabilize him. For the next 3 hours, they fought to keep Harrison Wells alive, and it was Imani's keen observation that had made the critical difference. By the time dawn broke, Harrison had been moved to the ICU, and Imani was finally able to take a breath. Dr. Patel approached her as she updated the patient's chart. "Quick thinking in there, Imani. You saved his life. Not many would have caught that bracelet in all the chaos." She smiled tiredly. "Just doing my job." "Well, your job just saved one of the richest men in the city. The hospital administrator is practically doing cartwheels." He patted her shoulder before walking away. Imani finished her shift and was heading home when the hospital administrator intercepted her. "Nurse Washington, I can't tell you how grateful the board is for your exceptional work tonight. Mr. Wells' family has been notified and they've specifically asked who was responsible for saving his life." Imani shifted uncomfortably. She had never been good at taking praise. "It was a team effort, sir." "Of course. But I understand it was your observation about his condition that made the difference." He handed her a business card. "His sister asked that you call her when you have a moment. Apparently, they would like to thank you personally." Imani took the card, surprised. She had never been singled out by a patient's family like this before, especially one as prominent as the Wells family. At home, Imani collapsed into bed in her small apartment. She lived alone, having dedicated herself to her career after her mother passed away 3 years ago. The walls were adorned with photos of her family, her late parents, cousins, and aunts scattered across the country. Despite her exhaustion, she found herself staring at the business card. Claire Wells, Chief Operations Officer, Welltech Industries. After a few hours of restless sleep, curiosity got the better of her. She dialed the number. "Claire Wells speaking," came the crisp, professional voice. "Hello, Ms. Wells. This is Imani Washington, the nurse from Mercy General." "Nurse Washington?" The voice immediately warmed. "I cannot thank you enough for what you did for my brother. The doctors told us that without your intervention, Harrison might not have survived. I was just doing my job, ma'am. Please call me Claire. And what you did went far beyond your job description. Harrison is all the family I have left, and I'm eternally grateful. Which is why I'd like to invite you to dinner once Harrison is well enough to leave the hospital. He insists on thanking you personally." Imani hesitated. She had always maintained professional boundaries with patients. "That's really not necessary. I understand your reluctance, but this isn't just a casual request. Harrison is, well, when he sets his mind on something, he's quite persistent. It would mean a lot to both of us." Against her better judgment, Imani agreed. Over the next 2 weeks, Harrison Wells remained in the hospital recovering. Imani wasn't assigned to his care after that first night. Private nurses had been brought in, but she found herself checking his chart during her shifts. His recovery was progressing well. Then, one evening, as she was preparing to leave, she was surprised to find Harrison himself waiting by the nurses' station, leaning on a cane. "Nurse Washington?" he called out, his voice deeper and richer than she had expected. Imani approached him, noticing the way his intense blue eyes contrasted with his olive complexion. "Mr. Wells, you shouldn't be walking around unassisted." He smiled, revealing perfect white teeth. "I wanted to see the woman who saved my life with my own eyes. The private nurses only had a first name to go by." "Well, now you've seen me," she replied, feeling strangely self-conscious. "You should get back to your room. Will you escort me? I'd like to talk to you." Against her professional instincts, Imani agreed, offering her arm for support. As they walked slowly back to his private suite, Harrison studied her. "You know, they told me what happened that night, how you noticed something everyone else missed." Imani shrugged. "It's my job to pay attention to details. It's more than that. It's intuition, a gift." He stopped walking and turned to face her. "I owe you my life, Imani Washington." "You don't owe me anything, Mr. Wells." "Harrison, please." His gaze was intense, almost magnetic. "And I disagree. In my world, debts must always be repaid." Back in his room, Harrison sat on the edge of his bed, seeming reluctant for their conversation to end. "My sister mentioned she invited you to dinner." "She did. Will you come?" Imani hesitated. "I don't think it's appropriate. I'm your nurse." "Not anymore," he countered with a smile. "And I'll be discharged in a few days. Then I'll just be a grateful former patient, and you'll be the remarkable woman who saved my life." There was something in his eyes that made Imani's heart beat faster. "I'll consider it. That's all I ask." He took her hand suddenly, his touch sending an unexpected jolt through her. "Thank you, Imani. Truly." 3 days later, Harrison was discharged, and true to Claire's word, an invitation arrived at Imani's apartment. Dinner at the Wells mansion in 2 weeks once Harrison had regained more of his strength. Imani almost declined. It felt like crossing a line, and yet there was something about Harrison Wells that intrigued her. Perhaps it was the intensity in his eyes, or maybe it was the vulnerability she had witnessed in the trauma bay. Whatever it was, she found herself accepting. The night of the dinner, Imani stood before her closet in despair. What did one wear to dinner with a billionaire CEO? She finally settled on a simple black dress, elegant enough for a formal dinner but not overly pretentious. The Wells mansion was exactly as imposing as she had imagined, a sprawling modern structure of glass and stone overlooking the city. A butler greeted her at the door and led her through the grand entrance hall to a terrace where Harrison and Claire were waiting. Harrison rose when she entered, his movements still somewhat stiff, but much improved. He was even more handsome now, dressed in a tailored suit that accentuated his broad shoulders. "Imani," he said, his face lighting up. "You came." Claire approached with a warm smile, embracing Imani as if they were old friends. "I'm so glad you could join us. Harrison has talked about nothing else for days." Dinner was an intimate affair, served on the terrace with the glittering city lights spread out below them. Claire was charming and gracious, while Harrison was attentive, his eyes rarely leaving Imani. As the evening progressed, Imani found herself relaxing, even enjoying the conversation that flowed easily between them. Harrison was clearly brilliant, but there was a warmth to him that surprised her, a genuine interest in her life and background. "So, what made you become a nurse?" he asked as they enjoyed dessert. My mother was a nurse, Imani replied. I grew up watching her care for people, making a difference in their most vulnerable moments. I wanted that same purpose. She must be proud of you, Claire commented. She passed away 3 years ago. Cancer. Imani's voice softened. My father died when I was young, so it was just the two of us for a long time. Harrison's hand moved to cover hers on the table. I'm sorry. Claire and I lost our parents in a plane crash when I was 22. She was just 19. It made us closer, Claire added. When you lose your parents, siblings become even more precious. As the evening drew to a close, Harrison walked Imani to the door, dismissing the butler with a slight nod. I'd like to see you again, he said, his voice low and intimate. Properly. Not as a thank you dinner, but as a date? Imani finished for him, surprised by her own boldness. Yes. His smile was slow and captivating. Would that be so terrible? Imani knew she should say no. There were too many complications. The difference in their positions, the circumstances of their meeting. And yet, it wouldn't be terrible at all, she heard herself saying. Tomorrow night? She laughed. Don't you have a company to run? I do. But I also have a life to live, one that you made possible. He leaned in, his lips brushing her cheek. Until tomorrow, Imani Washington. As her taxi drove away from the mansion, Imani touched her cheek where his lips had been. What was she getting herself into? And why did it feel so thrillingly right? Little did she know that this was just the beginning of a journey that would uncover secrets buried deep in both their pasts, secrets that would change everything. Their first official date was at a small, exclusive restaurant overlooking the harbor. Harrison had reserved the entire rooftop terrace, an extravagance that both impressed and unnerved Imani. She had spent her life in modest circumstances, working hard for everything she had. This world of casual luxury was foreign territory. Is this how you always date? She asked as a server poured champagne into delicate crystal flutes. Renting out entire restaurants? Harrison chuckled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. Only when I'm trying to impress someone special. And does that happen often? Almost never, he admitted, his expression growing more serious. My life doesn't allow much room for personal connections. Welltech consumes most of my time. Imani nodded, understanding all too well. Her own demanding career had left little space for relationships. I get that. The ER isn't exactly conducive to a healthy dating life either. Then we have that in common. He raised his glass. 2 unlikely meetings. As they dined on exquisite seafood, Imani found herself increasingly drawn to Harrison. Beneath the polished exterior of the powerful CEO was a man of surprising depth, intelligent, thoughtful, and disarmingly vulnerable at times. He told her about building Welltech from a small tech startup to a global corporation, the sacrifices it had required and the toll it had taken on his personal life. Claire is the only constant, he said, his expression softening when he spoke of his sister. She was barely out of college when our parents died, but she stepped up, became my partner in every sense. Welltech wouldn't exist without her. You're lucky to have each other, Imani said, thinking of her own solitary existence. What about you? Harrison asked. Any siblings? Imani shook her head. Just me. My father died when I was 4, car accident. My mother never remarried. We moved around a lot when I was growing up, mostly in the South. She took nursing jobs wherever she could find them. That must have been difficult, constantly starting over. It taught me to adapt. Imani smiled, remembering, and it gave me perspective. I've lived in wealthy neighborhoods and in places where people struggled to keep the lights on. Helps me connect with all kinds of patients. Harrison studied her with those intense blue eyes. That explains a lot about you. The way you carry yourself, confident but unpretentious. It's refreshing. The evening passed in a blur of conversation, laughter, and an increasingly undeniable attraction. When Harrison drove her home in his sleek sports car, Imani found herself reluctant for the night to end. "I'd like to see you again," he said, as they stood outside her apartment building, his voice low and intimate in the darkness. "I'd like that too," she admitted. He stepped closer, his hand gently caressing her cheek. "May I?" Imani nodded, her heart racing as Harrison leaned in, his lips meeting hers in a kiss that started soft but quickly deepened with unexpected passion. When they finally parted, both were breathless. "Good night, Imani Washington," he whispered, his forehead resting against hers. "I'll call you tomorrow." True to his word, Harrison called the next day, and the day after that. Over the following weeks, they fell into a rhythm, seeing each other whenever their demanding schedules allowed. Harrison would sometimes surprise her at the hospital with lunch or send his driver to pick her up after a grueling shift. For her part, Imani found ways to remind him to take his medications and rest properly as he continued to recover from his injuries. Claire became a fast friend, often joining them for dinner or hosting them at the mansion. She seemed genuinely delighted by her brother's happiness, telling Imani privately, "I haven't seen him like this in years, maybe ever." 6 weeks into their relationship, Harrison invited Imani to accompany him to Welltech's annual charity gala. "It's a big event," he explained over dinner at her apartment. He had insisted on ordering in rather than going out, claiming he preferred the intimacy. "A lot of important people will be there, business partners, politicians, the press." Imani put down her fork, suddenly anxious. "You want me to meet all these people? As what exactly?" Harrison reached for her hand. "As the woman I'm falling in love with." The words hung in the air between them, both thrilling and terrifying. It was the first time either of them had put a name to what was developing between them. "Harrison," Imani began, unsure how to respond. "Too soon?" he asked, a rare uncertainty crossing his features. She shook her head. "No, it's just, this is happening so fast, and our worlds are so different." "Do those differences matter?" He squeezed her hand. "Because they don't to me. I've never felt this way about anyone, Imani. When I was lying in that hospital bed fighting to stay alive, something changed in me. I realized how much time I'd wasted chasing success at the expense of what really matters." "And what really matters?" she asked softly. "This, connection, love." His eyes held hers. "You." Imani felt tears threatening. "I'm falling for you too," she admitted. "And it scares me. People like me don't usually end up with people like you." "Then let's rewrite the usual." He pulled her close, kissing her with such tenderness that her doubts momentarily faded. The night of the gala arrived, and Imani stood before the mirror in her apartment, barely recognizing herself. Harrison had insisted on sending over a stylist with a selection of designer gowns. She had initially resisted, but Claire had called to persuade her. "It's not about changing you," Claire had assured her. "It's about making sure you feel comfortable in a room full of people who spend more on their shoes than most people make in a month. Trust me, I've been navigating these waters my whole life." So Imani had relented, and now she wore a stunning emerald gown that complemented her deep brown skin perfectly. Her normally practical hairstyle had been transformed into an elegant updo, and subtle makeup enhanced her natural beauty. When Harrison arrived to pick her up, the look of awe on his face was worth all the discomfort of the primping and styling. "You are breathtaking," he said, his voice husky with emotion. The gala was held at the city's most prestigious art museum, transformed for the evening into a glittering wonderland. As they entered, Imani on Harrison's arm, a hush fell over the nearby guests, followed quickly by a buzz of whispers. Harrison Wells, the city's most eligible bachelor, had arrived with an unknown woman. "Ignore them," Harrison murmured, sensing her discomfort. "They're just surprised to see me with someone. I don't usually bring dates to these things." Throughout the evening, Harrison introduced her to countless people, business associates, politicians, celebrities, all of whom regarded her with varying degrees of curiosity and sometimes barely concealed surprise. Imani handled each introduction with grace, though she couldn't help noticing the occasional raised eyebrow or subtly exchanged glance. "Harrison, darling!" A statuesque blonde in a skin-tight dress approached, air-kissing Harrison on both cheeks, before turning curious eyes to Imani. "Aren't you going to introduce me to your friend?" "Vanessa, this is Imani Washington," Harrison said, his arm tightening around Imani's waist. "Imani, Vanessa Hargrove, an old family friend." "Charmed," Vanessa said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "And what is it that you do, Imani?" "I'm a trauma nurse at Mercy General." "A nurse? How noble." Vanessa's tone suggested it was anything but. "And how did you two meet? Charity work, Harrison?" Imani felt Harrison tense beside her, but before he could respond, Claire appeared, elegant in a midnight blue gown. "Actually, Vanessa, Imani saved Harrison's life after his accident," Claire said smoothly. "If not for her quick thinking, we might be attending a very different kind of gathering right now." Vanessa had the grace to look embarrassed. "I had no idea." "Well, then we all owe you a debt of gratitude." As Vanessa moved away, Imani squeezed Harrison's hand. "Does it bother you?" she asked. "The way people are looking at us?" "The only thing that bothers me is the possibility that it might make you uncomfortable," he replied honestly. "I don't give a damn what any of these people think." Later, as they shared a dance, Harrison held her close, swaying gently to the music. "I want to show you something," he whispered. He led her away from the main hall, through a series of corridors until they reached a small, secluded courtyard lit by twinkling fairy lights. In the center was a fountain, its gentle burble the only sound in the peaceful space. "This is my favorite spot in the museum," Harrison said. "I helped fund the restoration of this courtyard a few years ago. It reminds me of a place my parents took us when we were children, a garden in Tuscany." "It's beautiful," Imani said, enchanted by the serene space. Harrison turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "Imani, I know this has all happened very quickly, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Meeting you, it wasn't just chance, it was fate." Imani's heart raced as Harrison reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "This belonged to my mother," he said, opening it to reveal a delicate gold bracelet set with emeralds. "I'd be honored if you would wear it." "Harrison," Imani breathed, overwhelmed. "It's gorgeous, but I couldn't possibly—" "Please," he interrupted gently. "It would mean everything to me." With trembling hands, she allowed him to fasten the bracelet around her wrist. The emeralds caught the light, twinkling like stars. "My mother would have loved you," he said softly. "She valued strength of character above all else." As he pulled her into his arms, kissing her under the star-filled sky, Imani felt a moment of perfect happiness. Yet somewhere deep inside, a small voice whispered that nothing this perfect could last. Neither of them noticed the figure watching from the shadows, eyes narrowed in calculation before slipping away undetected. The following morning, as Imani prepared for her shift at the hospital, her phone buzzed with a text from Claire. "Brunch today? I'm at Harbor Cafe. Need to talk to you about something important." Curious and a little concerned, Imani texted back that she would stop by before her shift. Little did she know that this conversation would be the first ripple in what would soon become a tidal wave of revelations. Harbor Cafe was a charming waterfront establishment known for its fresh seafood and spectacular views. Imani spotted Claire immediately, sitting at a corner table on the patio, a large sun hat shading her face despite the overcast day. She looked uncharacteristically tense, her fingers tapping nervously against her coffee cup. "Claire? Is everything okay?" Imani asked as she approached, concern evident in her voice. Claire looked up, her expression brightening. "Imani, yes, everything's fine." She rose to give Imani a quick hug. "I'm just dealing with some unexpected business matters. As Imani took her seat, a waiter appeared with coffee and a plate of fresh pastries. "I took the liberty of ordering for us," Claire explained. "I remember you mentioned how much you love their almond croissants." The thoughtful gesture only increased Imani's suspicion that something was amiss. In the short time she'd known Claire Wells, she'd recognized her as the type of woman who paid attention to details, especially when she was trying to soften difficult news. "Your text said you needed to talk about something important," Imani prompted after they'd exchanged pleasantries. Claire sighed, setting down her coffee cup. "Yes, it's about Harrison." She hesitated, seeming to choose her words carefully. "He's falling for you, Imani, hard and fast." "I know," Imani said softly. "I feel the same way." "That's what I was afraid of." Claire's expression grew troubled. "Look, I adore you. I think you're exactly what Harrison needs. You ground him. You make him happier than I've seen him in years. But there's something you should know about my brother." Imani's heart sank. Was he secretly married? Did he have some terrible illness he hadn't disclosed? "What is it?" "Harrison tends to rush into things when he's passionate about something or someone." Claire reached across the table to take Imani's hand. "After our parents died, he threw himself into building Welltech, working himself to the point of collapse. When he gets an idea in his head, he becomes almost obsessive. I've noticed he's very focused," Imani said carefully. "That's putting it mildly." Claire smiled weakly. "The thing is, Harrison has never been in love before. Not really. There have been relationships, of course, but nothing that touched him deeply. Until you." "Is that so terrible?" "No, it's wonderful, but it also means he doesn't know how to pace himself. The bracelet he gave you last night? Our mother wore that every day of her married life. It's practically sacred in our family." Imani touched the emerald bracelet, which she'd put on again that morning. "I had no idea it was so significant. Maybe I shouldn't—" "No, that's not what I'm saying," Claire interrupted. "I'm thrilled he gave it to you, but it's a sign of how serious he is, how quickly. And I'm worried that you might feel pressured, or that you might not realize just how deeply invested he already is." Imani considered this. It was true that their relationship had developed at whirlwind speed. Just 2 months ago, Harrison had been a stranger on a gurney in her ER. Now they were practically inseparable, and the intensity of her feelings sometimes frightened her. "I appreciate your concern, Claire, but I'm not feeling pressured. Surprised, sometimes overwhelmed, but not pressured. Harrison has been nothing but respectful of my boundaries." Claire nodded, looking relieved. "Good. That's good to hear. And there's something else?" She hesitated again. "The press has started asking questions about you." "The press?" "Harrison is news in this city. A billionaire CEO with a near-fatal accident who then starts dating the nurse who saved him? It's catnip to the tabloids." Claire pulled out her phone and showed Imani a gossip site with a blurry photo of them leaving the gala the previous night. The headline read, "Welltech CEO's mystery woman. Who is the beauty who's captured Harrison Wells' heart?" Imani felt a chill. She hadn't considered this aspect of dating someone with Harrison's profile. This is unsettling. It gets worse. Some of these sites are already digging into your background, trying to find anything scandalous. Harrison's PR team is working to control the narrative, but I wanted you to be prepared. "There's nothing to find," Imani said with a shrug. "I've led a pretty boring life. Nursing school, work, taking care of my mom when she got sick. No skeletons in my closet." Claire studied her for a long moment. "Sometimes it's not what you've done, but what you don't know that can catch you off guard." Before Imani could ask what she meant, Claire's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and frowned. "I'm sorry, I have to take this. Welltech emergency." She stepped away from the table, speaking in low, urgent tones that Imani couldn't quite make out. When Claire returned, her expression was troubled. "I have to go. There's a situation at the office." She signaled for the check. "Imani, there's one more thing. Harrison is planning something special for your 2-month anniversary next week. Just be prepared." "Special how?" Claire smiled enigmatically. "It's not my place to say, but I think you'll be surprised." As they parted outside the cafe, Claire hugged Imani tightly. "I meant what I said. I think you're wonderful for Harrison. I just want to make sure you both go into this with your eyes open." Imani mulled over Claire's words as she headed to her shift at the hospital. What had she meant about things Imani didn't know? And what was Harrison planning? The hospital was unusually busy that day, a multi-car pileup on the interstate keeping the ER in constant motion. Imani was grateful for the distraction, though her thoughts kept drifting back to her conversation with Claire. During her break, she checked her phone to find a message from Harrison. "Dinner tonight? My place. I miss you." The text made her smile despite her lingering concerns. She replied, "Finishing at 8, we'll come straight over." Harrison's penthouse occupied the top 2 floors of a sleek high-rise downtown. Unlike the family mansion where he often stayed with Claire, the penthouse was entirely his space. Modern, minimalist, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the city. When she arrived that evening, she found him in the kitchen attempting to cook what appeared to be risotto. "Don't tell me the great Harrison Wells is slaving over a hot stove?" she teased, setting down her bag and approaching him from behind. He turned, his face lighting up at the sight of her. "I wouldn't call it slaving, more like experimenting." He pulled her into his arms, kissing her with an intensity that made her knees weak. "I missed you today. I missed you too." She rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Though it looks like your risotto is about to burn." Harrison cursed, turning back to the stove. "Maybe we should order in." Later, after takeout and a glass of wine, they sat on his balcony, the city lights twinkling below them. Harrison seemed preoccupied, his fingers absently stroking her hand. "I saw Claire today," Imani ventured. "She mentioned the press has been asking about me." Harrison grimaced. "I'm sorry about that. Fame has its downsides." "She also said you're planning something for our anniversary?" A flash of annoyance crossed his face. "Claire talks too much sometimes. She didn't give details, just wanted me to be prepared." Harrison was quiet for a moment. "I had something in mind, but now I'm wondering if it's too soon." He turned to face her fully. "Imani, I know our relationship has moved quickly. If you need me to slow down, just say the word." The sincerity in his eyes touched her deeply. "It's not about speed. It's about being sure. And I am sure about how I feel about you." His smile was radiant. "I'm sure too. More sure than I've ever been about anything." He took her hand, bringing it to his lips. "Which is why I want you to move in with me." The request caught her completely off guard. "Harrison, You don't have to answer right away," he said quickly. "Think about it. But I want you to know that I'm serious about us, about our future together." Imani's mind raced. She hadn't expected this, though perhaps she should have, given Claire's warnings about Harrison's tendency to rush forward at full speed. "I'll think about it," she promised. The following days passed in a blur of work for both of them. Harrison was dealing with a potential takeover bid for Welltech, spending long hours at the office, while Imani's schedule at the hospital was particularly grueling due to staff shortages. They managed brief moments together. Breakfast at her apartment before dawn, a quick lunch when Harrison could slip away from the office, late-night calls when they were too exhausted to meet in person. 5 days after his invitation to move in, Imani found herself alone in her apartment, finally enjoying a rare day off. She was sorting through bills when her doorbell rang. To her surprise, it was a courier with an elegantly wrapped package. The card attached simply read, "For your consideration. Love, H." Inside, she found a small golden key and another card. "The key to my heart and my home. Say yes." Tears pricked her eyes at the gesture. It was romantic, thoughtful, and so very Harrison. As she turned the key over in her hand, her phone rang, an unknown number. "Hello? Is this Imani Washington?" a man's voice asked. "Yes, who's calling?" "My name is Detective James Morris, City Police Department. I'm handling the investigation into the accident involving Harrison Wells." Imani frowned, confused. "I thought the investigation was concluded weeks ago. The other driver was intoxicated." "We're looking into some irregularities in the case. I was hoping you might have time to answer a few questions, given your role that night." "Of course," she replied, though something about the call made her uneasy. "What would you like to know?" "Actually, I'd prefer to speak in person. Would you be available to meet at the station tomorrow morning?" "I suppose so. May I ask what kind of irregularities you're investigating?" There was a pause on the line. "It would be better to discuss in person, Ms. Washington. There's been some suggestion that Mr. Wells's accident might not have been accidental at all." After arranging the meeting for 10 a.m. the next day, Imani hung up, her mind racing. What did the detective mean? Who would want to harm Harrison? She was about to call him when another text came through, this one from Claire. "Need to see you ASAP. It's urgent. Can you meet me at the lab?" "The lab?" Imani texted back, confused. "Welltech's Medical Research Facility, 615 Harborview Drive. Please come now. It's about Harrison. And you." A sense of foreboding washed over Imani as she grabbed her keys and purse. What could be so urgent? And why meet at a lab? Little did she know that her world was about to be turned upside down, as secrets buried deep in both their pasts were about to surface with devastating clarity. Welltech's Medical Research Facility was a gleaming fortress of glass and steel that dominated the waterfront. As Imani approached the imposing structure, anxiety tightened her chest. What could be so urgent that Claire needed to see her here, of all places? The security guard at the entrance examined her ID closely before making a call. "Ms. Wells is expecting you. 15th floor, East Wing." The elevator climbed silently, depositing Imani into a sterile corridor lined with laboratories. Through glass walls, she could see scientists in white coats bent over microscopes and computer screens. At the end of the hall, Claire waited outside a door marked Genomic Research. "Imani, thank you for coming." Claire's usual composure seemed fractured, her eyes shadowed with worry. "I'm sorry for the cryptic message, but this couldn't wait." "What's going on, Claire? You're scaring me." Claire took a deep breath. "Before I explain, I need you to know that what I'm about to show you was never meant to hurt anyone. Quite the opposite." She swiped a key card and led Imani into a large laboratory. Workstations with advanced equipment lined the walls, but Claire guided her to a private office at the back. Inside, a middle-aged woman in a lab coat was studying a computer screen. "Dr. Patel, this is Imani Washington," Claire said. The doctor looked up, her expression a mixture of curiosity and something that looked unsettlingly like pity. "Ms. Washington, I've heard a lot about you." "What is this about?" Imani demanded, her patience wearing thin. Claire gestured for her to sit. "Welltech isn't just a tech company, Imani. One of our divisions specializes in medical research, particularly genetic testing. After Harrison's accident, we took samples of his blood for our database, something we do with all employees for medical emergencies." "Okay," Imani said slowly, not understanding the connection. "When you and Harrison began dating, Claire hesitated. "I took the liberty of running a standard background check. It's protocol for anyone close to the executive team." Imani stiffened. "You investigated me?" "Not like that," Claire quickly clarified. "Just basic information. Employment history, education, credit report, nothing invasive. But something unusual came up in your family background." "Dr." Patel turned her computer screen toward Imani. "Your mother's maiden name was Eleanor Taylor, correct?" Imani nodded, a knot forming in her stomach. "And she was born in South Carolina?" "Yes, Charleston. What does this have to do with anything?" Claire and Dr. Patel exchanged glances. "Our mother's family was also from Charleston," Claire said quietly. "The Taylors were a prominent family there for generations." Imani's heart began to pound. Lots of people have the same last name. That doesn't mean— "We ran a DNA comparison," Dr. Patel interrupted gently, "using Harrison's samples from the hospital and a specimen from your employee health screening at Mercy General." "You did what?" Imani stood abruptly. "That's a complete violation of privacy. You had no right to—" "Imani, please," Claire pleaded. "I would never have done this without serious cause. When I saw your mother's maiden name and birthplace, alarm bells went off. There was a family situation years ago that few people know about." Dr. Patel cleared her throat. "The results are conclusive, Ms. Washington. You and Mr. Wells share approximately 12.5% of your DNA, consistent with first cousins." The room seemed to tilt. Imani grabbed the edge of the desk to steady herself. "That's impossible." "I wish it were," Claire said, her voice breaking. "My grandfather, Harrison's and my grandfather, had a brother named William. There was a scandal in the family in the 1960s. William had an affair with an African-American woman who worked for the family. When she became pregnant, our great-grandfather disowned William, cut him off completely. The family never spoke of him again." "Are you saying—" Imani couldn't finish the sentence, the implications too overwhelming. "William Taylor was your grandfather, Imani, which makes you Harrison's first cousin." Imani sank back into the chair, her mind reeling. "This can't be happening." "I'm so sorry," Claire whispered. "I had to tell you before things went any further between you and Harrison." "Does he know?" Claire shook her head. "Not yet. I wanted to speak with you first." Imani pressed her hands to her temples, trying to process the bombshell. Her mother had rarely spoken about her own father, only saying that he had abandoned them when she was young. Could this really be true? Was she actually related to Harrison, the man she had been falling in love with? "I need to see the evidence," she said finally, her nurse's training kicking in, demanding facts and verification. Dr. Patel nodded and began pulling up charts and data on her screen. "Here is the genetic marker analysis. You can see the shared segments on chromosomes 7, 11, and 15 consistent with first-cousin relationships." Imani stared at the charts, understanding enough from her medical background to recognize the truth in what she was seeing. It wasn't a mistake or a misinterpretation. She and Harrison were blood relatives. "I think I'm going to be sick," she murmured. Claire quickly fetched a glass of water. "I know this is a terrible shock, and I'm sorry for the way I went about it, but when I realized the possibility, I had to know for sure." Imani took a shaky sip of water. "How could this happen? What are the odds?" "Astronomical," Dr. Patel acknowledged, "but family lines have a way of crossing paths, especially when there are secrets involved." A terrible thought struck Imani. The hospital. When I saved Harrison's life, I knew about his blood disorder. It's a rare genetic condition. She looked up at Claire. "It runs in families." Claire nodded gravely. "Von Willebrand disease. My mother had it and her father before her." "My mother had bleeding issues too," Imani whispered. "The doctors never diagnosed it specifically, but—" The reality was sinking in, each new connection making the truth undeniable. She and Harrison shared blood, literally and figuratively. "What do we do now?" Imani asked, her voice small. "Harrison needs to know," Claire said firmly. "I can tell him if you'd prefer." Imani shook her head. "No, I should be the one." As if summoned by their conversation, Imani's phone buzzed with a text from Harrison. "Missing you. Dinner tonight? I have news." The simple message brought tears to her eyes. How could she tell him that their relationship was now impossible? That their growing love was taboo? "There's something else you should know," Claire said hesitantly. "About Harrison's accident." Imani looked up, remembering the detective's call. "What about it?" "We have reason to believe it wasn't an accident at all. The brake lines in Harrison's car were tampered with. Tampered with? You mean someone tried to kill him? Claire's expression was grim. It appears that way. We've been investigating privately, not wanting to alarm Harrison until we had concrete evidence. But who would want to harm him? Harrison has enemies. Welltech is on the verge of a revolutionary medical breakthrough that could make certain pharmaceutical companies obsolete. There are billions at stake. Imani's head was spinning. First, the revelation that she and Harrison were cousins, and now learning that someone had tried to murder him. It was too much to process. The detective who called me, Morris, is he part of your private investigation? Claire frowned. What detective? We haven't involved the police yet. A chill ran down Imani's spine. He called this morning, asking to meet about irregularities in Harrison's accident. He said he's with the city police. We need to verify that immediately. Claire pulled out her phone, dialing quickly. Security? I need a check on a Detective James Morris with the city police. She listened for a moment, her expression growing more concerned. I see, thank you. She hung up, turning to Imani. There's no Detective Morris in the department's traffic investigation unit. Then who called me? Someone who's taking a very close interest in you and Harrison. Claire's voice was tight with worry. This is exactly what I was afraid of. You're being drawn into something dangerous, Imani. Imani felt as though she were drowning, overwhelmed by revelations she couldn't have imagined hours earlier. I need some air. Of course. Claire gently touched her arm. But please, don't go to that meeting tomorrow. And don't tell anyone about it, not even Harrison, until we figure out who this person is. Imani nodded numbly, her mind still reeling from everything she'd learned. As she walked out of the laboratory, she glanced back at the genetic charts on Dr. Patel's screen, the irrefutable evidence that had just shattered her world. Outside, the cool evening air helped clear her head slightly. She walked aimlessly along the waterfront, trying to make sense of it all. How was she going to tell Harrison? What would this mean for them? And who was the mysterious person posing as a detective, taking an interest in their relationship? Her phone buzzed again with another text from Harrison. Are you okay? Haven't heard back from you. With trembling fingers, she replied, Need to talk. Something important. Can I come over now? His response was immediate. Of course. Is everything all right? She couldn't bring herself to answer that question. Nothing was all right, and nothing would ever be the same again. At Harrison's penthouse, the doorman greeted her with a familiar smile. Good evening, Ms. Washington. Mr. Wells is expecting you. The elevator ride to the top floor felt like a journey to the gallows. When the doors opened, Harrison was waiting, his face lighting up at the sight of her before quickly shifting to concern. Imani, what's wrong? He reached for her, but she stepped back involuntarily. The hurt in his eyes was immediate. We need to talk, she said, her voice barely audible. You're scaring me. He guided her into the living room. Whatever it is, we can figure it out together. Imani took a deep breath, steeling herself. Harrison, I just came from Welltech's medical research facility. I was meeting with Claire and a geneticist named Dr. Patel. His brow furrowed. Claire never mentioned you were coming by. What was it about? It was about us. Imani forced herself to meet his gaze. They ran a DNA comparison, Harrison, between you and me. A DNA comparison? Why would they? His voice trailed off, confusion evident on his face. Because Claire noticed something in my background that concerned her, my mother's maiden name, where she was from. Imani swallowed hard. Harrison, the test showed that we're related. We're first cousins. The silence that followed was deafening. Harrison's face went through a series of emotions: disbelief, shock, denial, and finally, a dawning horror. That's not possible, he whispered. I saw the results myself. Our mothers were first cousins, which makes us first cousins once removed. or more simply, first cousins. Harrison sank onto the couch, his face ashen. How? As gently as she could, Imani explained what Claire had told her about William Taylor, the family scandal, the disownment. My grandfather's brother, Harrison murmured. I never even knew he existed. Your family buried the story, and my mother rarely spoke about her father. Imani sat beside him, careful to maintain distance. Harrison, I'm so sorry. He reached for her hand, then seemed to think better of it, pulling back. All this time, when we were... I know. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I didn't know either. Harrison stood abruptly, pacing the room. There must be a mistake. We'll get another test, a different lab. It's not a mistake. Imani's voice was gentle but firm. The genetic markers don't lie. We share blood, Harrison. We're family. The word family seemed to hit him like a physical blow. He stopped pacing, his shoulders slumping in defeat. What do we do now? He asked, echoing her earlier question to Claire. I don't know, she admitted. But we can't be together, not in the way we were. Harrison turned to her, his eyes filled with a pain that broke her heart all over again. Imani, I love you. This doesn't change how I feel. But it changes everything else, she whispered. You know it does. As they stood there, caught in a moment of impossible grief, neither could have imagined that this revelation, devastating as it was only the beginning of a mystery that would uncover even darker secrets lurking in both their family histories, secrets some would kill to protect. The days following their devastating discovery were a blur of grief and confusion for Imani. She called in sick to the hospital, unable to focus on caring for others when her own world had imploded. Harrison had tried to call and text multiple times, but she couldn't bring herself to respond. What was there to say? No words could change the cold, hard reality of their shared DNA. On the third day, she forced herself to answer a call from Claire. Imani, I've been worried sick about you. Claire's voice was thick with concern. Harrison told me you're not answering his calls. I just need time, Imani said, her voice hoarse from crying. This isn't something I can process overnight. Of course, I understand. I just wanted to check that you're all right. Claire paused. There's also the matter of that fake detective. Have you heard from him again? No, I didn't go to the meeting. Good. Our security team is looking into it, but we haven't identified him yet. Claire hesitated before continuing. Imani, I know this is terrible timing, but there's something else we discovered during the DNA analysis that I think you should know. Imani closed her eyes, not sure she could handle any more revelations. What is it? The genetic markers for von Willebrand disease. They're present in your DNA, just as we suspected. You're a carrier, like your mother was. It's important for your health that you know this. A familiar sense of numbness settled over Imani. Another connection to the Wells family, another strand of DNA binding her to Harrison in ways that made their love impossible. Thank you for telling me, she said mechanically. There's more, Claire continued, her voice becoming strangely hesitant. Dr. Patel found some inconsistencies in the overall genetic profile. Nothing definitive, but enough to make her suggest we run more comprehensive tests. Inconsistencies? What does that mean? It's probably nothing. Just anomalies in how some of the genetic markers present. It happens sometimes with these tests. Claire didn't sound entirely convinced by her own explanation. But if you're willing, we'd like to run a more complete analysis. Imani stared out her apartment window at the rain-streaked glass. More tests. More invasions of her privacy. More revelations that could shatter what little remained of her world. I'll think about it, she said finally. Right now, I just need some space. After hanging up, she found herself drawn to the small box of her mother's possessions that she'd kept after her death. Inside were old photographs, a few pieces of jewelry, and a worn, leather-bound journal. Imani had never read it, respecting her mother's privacy even after she was gone. But now, desperate for answers, she opened it. Most entries were mundane: daily reflections, notes about nursing shifts, observations about Imani's childhood. But as she neared the end, a passage from shortly before her mother's death caught her eye. March 15th, 2020. The doctor says I have less time than we thought. I should tell Imani the truth, but after all these years, how can I? She believes her father died when she was young. Better that than knowing he abandoned us because of his family's racism. William's brother made it clear: either he left us, or the Taylors would destroy us both. Such powerful, cruel people. I've protected Imani from that world all her life. But now I wonder, was silence the right choice? The truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how deep we try to bury it. Imani's hands trembled as she read the words. Her mother had known more than she'd ever shared. The Taylors, Harrison's family, had deliberately torn her parents apart. Anger flared alongside her grief. How many lives had been destroyed by the Wells-Taylor family's arrogance and prejudice? Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Ms. Washington, we still need to discuss Harrison Wells' accident. Meet at Victory Park, East Entrance, 3 p.m. today. Come alone. Your safety depends on it. Imani stared at the message, torn between fear and curiosity. The rational part of her knew she should ignore it, report it to Claire's security team. But another part of her, the part that had just discovered her mother's secrets, craved answers. After a moment's hesitation, she texted back a single word. Why? The response came immediately. Because you're in danger too. The accident wasn't meant just for him. A chill ran down Imani's spine. What did that mean? How could she have been a target when she and Harrison hadn't even met at the time of the accident? Against her better judgment, she decided to go. She would be careful, meet in a public place, tell someone where she was going. She texted her friend and fellow nurse, Dasha, meeting someone at Victory Park at 3. If you don't hear from me by 4, call this number. She included Claire's contact information. At the park, Imani positioned herself near the east entrance, wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap, scanning faces for anyone who might be watching for her. The park was busy with afternoon visitors, families with children, joggers, people walking dogs. Ms. Washington. The voice came from behind her. She turned to find a middle-aged man in a nondescript gray suit. Average height, average build, with the kind of forgettable face that could blend into any crowd. Who are you? She demanded. And why are you impersonating a police detective? My name isn't important. What matters is that I'm trying to help you. He gestured to a nearby bench. Shall we sit? Warily, Imani followed him, making sure to stay in full view of other park visitors. I work for a private security firm, the man explained. We were hired to investigate threats against WellTech executives, including Harrison Wells. Hired by whom? That's confidential, but I assure you, our concern for your safety is genuine. I don't even know Harrison Wells when his accident occurred, Imani pointed out. So why would I have been a target? The man studied her for a moment. You really don't know, do you? Your connection to the Wells family goes deeper than you realize. He reached into his jacket and removed a manila envelope. These are copies of documents you should see, but I warn you, what you learn will change everything you think you know about yourself and your relationship with Harrison Wells. Imani stared at the envelope, a sense of dread washing over her. What is this about? DNA doesn't lie, Ms. Washington, but people do. He handed her the envelope. Particularly people with wealth and power who want to protect family secrets. Before she could ask more questions, he stood. Don't open this here. Go somewhere private, and be careful who you trust, especially within the Wells family. With that cryptic warning, he walked away, disappearing into the crowd of park visitors. Imani clutched the envelope, her heart racing. What new revelation could possibly rival the shock of discovering she was Harrison's cousin? She was still sitting on the bench, stunned, when her phone rang. Harrison. After a moment's hesitation, she answered. "Hello?" "Imani." His voice was rough with emotion. "Please don't hang up. I need to see you." "Harrison, I don't think that's a good idea. We both need space to process this. This isn't about us, our relationship." He sounded urgent. "It's about Claire. She's been keeping things from both of us. I found something in her office. Files about my accident, about your mother, about genetic testing she's been conducting for months. This goes beyond what she told us." Imani looked down at the envelope in her hand. "What kind of things?" "I'm not sure yet, but I don't think we can trust her. Not completely." He paused. "Will you meet me, please? I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important." Against her better judgment, Imani agreed to meet him at a quiet coffee shop downtown, away from both Welltech and the hospital. When she arrived, Harrison was already there, occupying a corner table with his back to the wall. He looked terrible, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, his normally immaculate appearance disheveled. But even in this state, her heart lurched at the sight of him. "Thank you for coming," he said as she sat across from him, careful to maintain a physical distance. "What did you find, Harrison?" He glanced around before pulling out a tablet. "Claire's been conducting genetic research on our family for nearly a year, long before my accident, long before I met you. Look at this." He showed her an email from Claire to Dr. Patel, dated 8 months earlier. "Need to confirm genetic markers on samples 23A and 47B. Discrepancies could validate theory of non-paternal event in Taylor lineage. Keep this strictly confidential. Wells Board cannot know until we're certain." "Non-paternal event?" Imani repeated. "What does that mean?" "In genetic terms, it means the biological father isn't who the records claim it is." Harrison's eyes met hers. "Claire has been researching our family tree, specifically looking for inconsistencies in paternity." "Why would she do that?" "I don't know, but it gets stranger." He swiped to another document. "This is a genetic profile Claire compiled of our grandfather. Not the one who disowned William Taylor, but his son, my mother's father." Imani scanned the document, her nursing background allowing her to understand the basics. "These are markers for hereditary traits?" "Yes, and according to this analysis, there's a high probability that my grandfather wasn't actually a biological Taylor, which would mean that your mother wasn't biologically related to William Taylor," Imani finished, the implications hitting her. "And if that's true, then you and I might not be blood relatives after all," Harrison said, his voice barely above a whisper. Imani felt dizzy with the possibility. But why would Claire lie to them? Why put them through the agony of believing they were cousins if it might not be true? "There's something else," Harrison continued, swiping to another document. "This is a police report from a month before my accident. Someone broke into Welltech's genetic lab. Nothing valuable was taken, but several samples were missing, including mine." "You think there's a connection?" "I don't know. But the timing is suspicious." He leaned forward. "And now I find out Claire's been secretly investigating our family genetics for months, looking specifically at whether my mother's father was actually a Taylor." Imani remembered the mysterious man's words. "DNA doesn't lie, Ms. Washington, but people do." She reached into her bag and pulled out the envelope he had given her. "I met someone today, the man who was posing as a detective. He gave me this." Together, they opened the envelope. Inside were copies of old letters, photographs, and what appeared to be a partial DNA analysis report. One photograph caught Imani's attention immediately. A black and white image of a young woman who looked strikingly like her mother, standing arm in arm with a handsome young man in a military uniform. "That's William Taylor," Harrison said, recognizing the man. "And I'm guessing that's your grandmother?" Imani nodded, turning the photo over. Written on the back was a date, June 1962, and the words, "Forever yours, no matter what they say. Love transcends blood." W. Love transcends blood. The words seemed to hang in the air between them. "What does all this mean, Harrison?" Imani asked, overwhelmed. "I don't know yet, but I intend to find out." His eyes held hers, fierce with determination. "Someone is playing an elaborate game with our lives, Imani, and I think Claire knows more than she's telling us." As they sat surrounded by the mysterious documents, both felt a glimmer of something that had been extinguished days earlier. Hope. If the DNA test results were somehow wrong or manipulated, if they weren't actually cousins. But even as that hope flickered, Imani couldn't shake the feeling that they were stepping into something far more dangerous than a forbidden romance. Someone had tried to kill Harrison. Someone was sending her cryptic messages and documents. And someone, perhaps even Claire, was keeping secrets that were worth killing to protect. "We need to be careful," Harrison said as they left the coffee shop, walking close but not touching. "If someone tampered with my car and is keeping tabs on you, they're clearly willing to go to extreme measures." Imani nodded, clutching the envelope of documents. "Do you think Claire could be behind the accident? Your own sister?" Harrison's expression darkened. "I don't want to believe it, but something isn't right. The timing of her genetic research, the break-in at the lab, the accident, it's all connected somehow." They agreed to meet the following day at a public library to review all the documents more thoroughly. It felt safer than either of their homes, which might be under surveillance. That night, Imani barely slept, her mind racing with questions. The photograph of William Taylor and her grandmother haunted her. "Love transcends blood," he had written. What exactly had he meant by that? The next morning, she arrived at the library first, securing a private study room at the back. Harrison joined her 30 minutes later, bringing coffee and carrying a slim briefcase. "I found something else," he said as soon as they were alone. "Financial records showing Welltech making payments to a genetic research facility in Switzerland for the past year. The payments were authorized by Claire, but never mentioned in any board meetings or official company documents." "Secret genetic research?" Imani frowned. "That seems extreme even for normal corporate privacy." "Exactly. And look at this." He pulled out a document showing a series of emails between Claire and someone identified only as HT in Switzerland. These were in a hidden folder on Claire's private server. I had to use my override access to find them. The emails were cryptic, discussing confirmation of the lineage discrepancy and potential implications for inheritance claims. The final email from HT was the most disturbing. "If confirmed, this changes everything. The Wells-Taylor line is not what anyone believes. Proceed with caution. Some secrets are buried for good reasons." "Who is HT?" Imani asked. "I don't know yet, but I intend to find out." Harrison ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "Meanwhile, what did you find in those documents the detective gave you?" Together, they spread the contents of the envelope across the table. In addition to the photograph, there were several letters exchanged between William Taylor and Imani's grandmother, Eleanor's mother. The letters told a story of forbidden love in the early 1960s, but with strange references that seemed out of place. "I don't wish to deceive you, my darling," read one letter from William. "The truth about my family is more complex than I've shared. The Taylor name carries burdens you cannot imagine. When the time is right, I will tell you everything. Until then, know that what flows in my veins is not what defines me." "That's odd phrasing," Imani murmured. "What flows in my veins is not what defines me." It's almost as if he's hinting at something about his bloodline. "Maybe he knew," Harrison suggested. "Maybe he knew that he wasn't biologically a Taylor or that there was something unusual about his family heritage." They continued through the documents, finding more cryptic references and hints, but nothing definitive. The DNA analysis report was particularly frustrating. It appeared to be only a fragment, showing partial results with no clear conclusions. "This is useless without the full report," Imani said in frustration. "We need more information." "I think I know where to start," Harrison replied. "Dr. Patel. She conducted the analysis that supposedly proved we're cousins. If there's something wrong with those results, she might know, or at least be able to tell us if they could have been manipulated." "But she works for Claire. If Claire is involved in whatever's happening, Dr. Patel might not help us." Harrison's expression hardened with determination. "Then we'll have to be persuasive. I'm still the CEO of WellTech. That counts for something." They agreed to approach Dr. Patel the next day. In the meantime, Imani would return to work at the hospital, maintaining normalcy to avoid suspicion, while Harrison would continue digging into Claire's communications with the mysterious HT. As they prepared to leave, Harrison hesitated. "Imani, I need to say something." His voice was low, intense. "I know this is all confusing and frightening, but I want you to know that my feelings for you haven't changed. If we discover that we're not related after all—" "Harrison," she interrupted gently, "let's not get ahead of ourselves. We need facts first, not hopes." He nodded, respecting her caution, though the longing in his eyes was unmistakable. "Facts first," he agreed. Returning to the hospital felt surreal to Imani. How could she focus on patients when her entire world had been turned upside down? Yet the familiar routines of nursing provided a strange comfort, a reminder that life continued even when personal crises threatened to overwhelm. During her break, she received a text from Harrison. "Dr. Patel agreed to meet us tonight, 8 p.m. at her home, said she has concerns of her own that she wouldn't discuss at WellTech." This was promising. If Dr. Patel was willing to speak to them away from the company, perhaps she had information Claire didn't want revealed. The rest of Imani's shift dragged by agonizingly slowly. Finally, at 7:30, she changed out of her scrubs and drove to the address Harrison had sent, an elegant townhouse in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood. Harrison was waiting in his car. He joined her as she walked to the door. "Ready?" he asked. She nodded, though her stomach churned with anxiety. Dr. Patel answered their knock immediately, ushering them inside with nervous glances at the street. She was dressed casually, a stark contrast to her professional lab attire. "Thank you for meeting us," Harrison began once they were seated in her living room. "I've been expecting you," Dr. Patel replied, "ever since I realized what was happening. But we don't have much time. Claire's people check on me regularly." Imani and Harrison exchanged alarmed glances. "Claire has people watching you?" Imani asked. "Not officially, but yes." Dr. Patel's hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her glasses. "I've worked at WellTech for 15 years. I've always conducted my research with integrity. But in the past year, Claire has been applying pressure, demanding results that align with her expectations, regardless of the actual data." "What kind of results?" Harrison pressed. "Initially, it was research into the genetic markers of the Taylor family line, focusing specifically on your grandfather, Mr. Wells. Claire was convinced there was a discrepancy in his paternity, that he wasn't the biological son of his supposed father." "And was she right?" Imani asked, her heart pounding. Dr. Patel hesitated. "The results were inconclusive. DNA from that generation is difficult to analyze properly without direct samples. We were working from descendants, extrapolating backward. But Claire wasn't satisfied with inconclusive. She kept pushing, insisting we find proof of her theory." "Which was?" Harrison prompted. "That your grandfather, and therefore your mother, had no biological connection to the Taylor line. That sometime in the 1920s there was a child either adopted or born of an affair who became integrated into the Taylor family under false pretenses." Imani leaned forward. "And what about our DNA test, the one showing Harrison and I are cousins?" Dr. Patel's expression grew troubled. "That's why I agreed to this meeting. The test Claire ordered me to perform, I have reason to believe the samples may have been compromised." Compromised how? Harrison demanded. When I analyzed your DNA, Mr. Wells, I used a fresh sample drawn after your accident. But Ms. Washington's sample... She shook her head. Claire provided it, claiming it came from the hospital's employee screening. But there were inconsistencies in the labeling, small details that bothered me. Are you saying Claire might have tampered with my sample? Imani asked, horrified. I'm saying I cannot vouch for the integrity of the comparison. And when I raised these concerns with Claire, she dismissed them, insisting I finalize the report showing you two as first cousins. Harrison's face hardened. Why would she do that? Why would my sister deliberately falsify results to make Imani and me believe we're related if we're not? That's what I can't understand, Dr. Patel admitted. Unless there's something more valuable to her than your happiness. Like what? Imani asked. Control of Welltech, perhaps? The company bylaws contain unusual provisions regarding marriage and inheritance within the Wells family. If you two were to marry... She stopped, looking embarrassed. I'm speculating, of course. No, please continue, Harrison encouraged. This might be important. If you were to marry someone outside the approved social circles, it could potentially trigger clauses that would shift more operational control to Claire as COO. It's an outdated provision, but still legally binding unless formally changed by the board. Harrison sat back, stunned. You're suggesting my sister might have fabricated a family connection between Imani and me to prevent our relationship, all to maintain her power at Welltech? It seems extreme, Dr. Patel acknowledged. But these past months, Claire has been different. Obsessive about the genetic research, secretive, spending hours in private calls with someone she refers to only as HT. We've seen those communications, Imani confirmed. Do you know who HT is? No. But I overheard Claire mention a Henry once during a heated phone conversation. It could be the same person. A sudden noise outside made Dr. Patel jump. She moved to the window, peering cautiously through the blinds. You need to leave. Now. There's a car I don't recognize parked across the street. Harrison stood. Dr. Patel, we need definitive answers. Can you run a new DNA test? One that Claire doesn't know about? I would need fresh samples from both of you, and I couldn't use Welltech's facilities. Claire monitors everything there. Is there somewhere else? A facility you trust? Dr. Patel thought for a moment, then nodded. I have a colleague at the University Research Center. She'd help us, no questions asked, but we'd need to be careful. Set it up, Harrison instructed. And in the meantime, be cautious. If Claire suspects you're helping us, I understand the risks. Dr. Patel's expression was resolute. But scientific integrity matters to me. If I helped perpetuate false results, even unwittingly, I need to correct that. As they left through the back door, Harrison whispered to Imani, if Claire really falsified those results, if we're not actually related, I know, Imani whispered back. But we need to be sure, and we need to understand why she would do something so extreme. The night air was cool against Imani's skin as they hurried to their cars. Just as Harrison was opening her driver's side door, headlights swept across them. The unknown car Dr. Patel had spotted was on the move. Get in, Harrison ordered, pulling Imani toward his own vehicle instead. We're being followed. As they sped away, the other car fell in behind them, maintaining a careful distance. Harrison navigated through side streets trying to lose their tail, but the driver was skilled, keeping pace with every turn. Who are they? Imani asked, her voice tight with fear. I don't know, but we're about to find out. Harrison pressed the accelerator, darting through a yellow light just as it turned red. The pursuing car hesitated at the intersection, then accelerated through the red light, nearly causing a collision. They're determined, Imani observed. This isn't just casual interest. Harrison's jaw tightened. No, it's not. And that tells us something important. What? We're getting close to the truth, and someone is very, very afraid of what we might discover. Harrison managed to lose their pursuer by navigating through a complex series of turns in a residential neighborhood, eventually pulling into the underground parking garage of a luxury hotel. "We should be safe here for a while," he said, cutting the engine. "I know the security director. No one gets in without being logged." Imani's hands were shaking. The reality of their situation was sinking in. This wasn't just about uncovering family secrets anymore. Someone was willing to put them in physical danger to keep those secrets buried. "What now?" she asked. "We can't go back to your place or mine. If they followed us from Dr. Patel's, they probably know where we live already," Harrison finished grimly. "We need somewhere safe to regroup." He pulled out his phone. "I have a penthouse suite here that's kept off the books for high-profile clients who need privacy. We can use it tonight." The suite was spacious and elegantly appointed, with a living area, 2 bedrooms, and a kitchenette. After Harrison made a call to hotel security to ensure no one unusual had entered the building, they finally allowed themselves to relax slightly. "We need to find out who HT is," Harrison said, pacing the living room. "That seems to be at the center of all this." Imani nodded, pulling out her phone. "Let me try something." She called the hospital's administrative office, using her credentials to access their system. "This is Nurse Washington from the ER. I need to check a patient registration from about 8 months ago. Potential HIPAA compliance issue. Last name Taylor. First name likely starts with H." After a moment, she thanked the person on the other end and hung up. "Nothing in our system for a Henry Taylor or any H. Taylor in the last year, but it was worth a try." Harrison was already on his laptop. "I'm searching WellTech's employee database, past and present, and checking our major investors and partners." They worked in parallel for almost an hour, following leads and checking possibilities. Finally, Harrison sat back with a frustrated sigh. "Nothing. Whoever HT is, they're not directly connected to WellTech in any obvious way." "Maybe we're looking in the wrong places," Imani suggested. "The emails mentioned Switzerland. What if HT isn't American?" Harrison's eyes lit up. "You're right. Let me try something else." He began typing rapidly. "I'm accessing our international partnership database, filtering for Swiss connections." Imani watched over his shoulder as he worked. Suddenly, a name jumped out at her. "Wait! Heinrich Thorn! Could that be HT?" Harrison clicked on the name. Dr. Heinrich Thorn, genetic researcher at the Zurich Institute for Advanced Biomedicine. WellTech made a substantial donation to the institute last year, authorized by Claire. He continued reading. "Specializes in hereditary conditions and genetic lineage verification. Previously worked on identifying remains of Holocaust victims through genetic markers. An expert in determining family connections through DNA," Imani murmured. "That can't be coincidental." Harrison opened a new search window and typed in Thorne's name. "Let's see what else we can find about him." Articles appeared about Thorne's groundbreaking work in genetic identification, his awards, and publications. But one headline caught their attention. "Swiss genetic researcher linked to controversial bloodline authentication movement." The article described how Thorne had been criticized by some in the scientific community for his involvement with wealthy European families seeking to verify their aristocratic lineages. Critics claimed his work sometimes reinforced harmful notions of genetic superiority and pure bloodlines. "This gets stranger by the minute," Harrison said. "Why would Claire be working with someone like this? And why keep it secret from you? You're the CEO. Wouldn't genetic research be something you'd normally be informed about?" Harrison nodded slowly. "Unless the research wasn't really for WellTech at all. What if it was personal? About our family specifically?" As they pondered this, Imani received a text from Dr. Patel. "University lab secured for tomorrow, 2 p.m. Come separately. No digital communications after this. We'll collect samples and run tests immediately. Results in 48 hours. Imani showed Harrison the message. "At least that's moving forward." "We should try to get some sleep," Harrison suggested. glancing at the clock, which showed it was past midnight. "Tomorrow's going to be challenging." They awkwardly acknowledged the two separate bedrooms, both acutely aware of the tension between them, the attraction neither could deny, complicated by the uncertainty about their relationship. "Good night, Harrison," Imani said softly. "Good night," he replied, his eyes conveying everything he couldn't say. Sleep proved elusive for Imani. She tossed and turned, her mind racing through everything they'd learned. Around 3 a.m. she gave up and went to the living room, only to find Harrison already there, staring out at the city lights. "Couldn't sleep either?" she asked. He shook his head. "Too much to process." She sat beside him on the couch, careful to maintain distance. "What are you thinking? That nothing in my life is what I thought it was." His voice was rough with emotion. "My sister, my family history, even who I am. Everything feels like a lie." "I understand," Imani said gently. "I thought I knew my family story too, simple and straightforward, if a bit sad. Now I don't know what to believe." Harrison turned to face her. "There's one thing I'm certain of, Imani. My feelings for you are real. Whether we're related or not, that hasn't changed." "Harrison," she began, but he raised a hand. "I know. We need to wait for the truth. I'm not asking for anything now. I just wanted you to know." The vulnerability in his eyes moved her deeply. Despite everything, despite the possibility they might indeed be cousins, her heart still responded to him. "I feel the same," she admitted quietly. They sat in silence for a while, taking comfort in each other's presence while the city slept below. Morning came with a renewed sense of purpose. Over breakfast ordered from room service, they mapped out their plan for the day. "I'll go to the university lab first," Imani said. "You should follow 30 minutes later. We need to minimize the chance of being seen together." Harrison nodded. "In the meantime, I want to look deeper into this Heinrich Thorn. I'm going to call some contacts in Switzerland, see what they know about him." "And what about Claire? Won't she notice you're not at Welltech?" "I've already messaged my assistant saying I'm working remotely today. It's not unusual." Harrison hesitated. "I hate being suspicious of my own sister, but until we know for sure what's going on, we have to be careful," Imani finished. "I understand." Before leaving, Harrison gave Imani an untraceable prepaid phone. "Use this to contact me from now on. Our regular phones might be monitored." At 1:30 p.m., Imani arrived at the University Medical Center following Dr. Patel's instructions to enter through a service door at the rear of the building. A research assistant was waiting to escort her through back hallways to a secure lab. Dr. Patel greeted her with evident relief. "You made it. Good. I was beginning to worry." "Has something happened?" Imani asked. "Not exactly, but I received a strange call from Claire this morning asking very pointed questions about my schedule today. She's never done that before." A chill ran down Imani's spine. "Do you think she suspects?" "I don't know. I told her I was giving a guest lecture, which is true. I have one later this afternoon." Dr. Patel gestured to a chair. "Let's get your sample now. Mr. Wells will be here soon?" "He should arrive in about 20 minutes. The sample collection was quick and straightforward, a simple cheek swab for DNA. As Dr. Patel was labeling the specimen, her phone buzzed. She checked it, her expression growing concerned. "That's strange. The security system just registered Claire's ID badge at the main entrance to the medical center." Imani tensed. Could it be a coincidence? Possibly. She does serve on the university's bioethics board, but they don't meet today. Dr. Patel quickly moved to a computer terminal. "Let me check the security camera." On the screen, they watched as Claire strode purposefully through the main lobby, speaking with a security guard who pointed toward a bank of elevators. "She's heading to the administrative level," Dr. Patel said. "Not toward the research labs. Maybe it is unrelated. Or maybe she's creating an alibi for being in the building," Imani suggested. "I should warn Harrison." She stepped into the hall to use the prepaid phone, but there was no signal in the basement laboratory area. "I need to find a better spot," she told Dr. Patel. "I'll be right back." Moving quickly through the corridor, Imani found a stairwell where the signal bars appeared. She texted Harrison, "Claire at Univ, be careful coming in." As she was about to return to the lab, she heard voices coming from the floor above, including one she recognized as Claire's. Instinctively, Imani pressed herself against the wall, listening. "I've made it clear that the research needs to remain confidential," Claire was saying. "If Harrison discovers what we've found before we're ready—" "Ms. Wells, I understand your concerns," replied a male voice with a German accent. "But scientific ethics demand—" "Ethics?" Claire's laugh was harsh. "This isn't about ethics, doctor. This is about $1 billion company and who controls it. The original DNA comparison was conclusive. They're not related. But Harrison can never know that." Imani's heart pounded so loudly she was afraid they would hear it. Claire had just confirmed their suspicions. The test results had been falsified. "And what of the nurse?" the accented voice asked. "She is becoming problematic." "Leave Imani Washington to me," Claire replied coldly. "Once my brother is safely married to Vanessa Hargrove, as our parents always intended, this will all blow over. Imani will move on, and Harrison will never need to know how close he came to disaster." Footsteps approached the stairwell door. Imani quickly descended, her mind reeling from what she'd overheard. Not just the confirmation that she and Harrison weren't cousins, but the implication that Claire had a specific plan for Harrison, a marriage apparently arranged by their parents. Back in the lab, she found Dr. Patel preparing additional testing materials. "Dr. Patel, I just overheard Claire talking to someone with a German accent. She admitted falsifying our test results. Harrison and I aren't related." The doctor's eyes widened. "A German accent? That must be Dr. Thorne. He arrived yesterday for a conference. I had no idea he was meeting with Claire." She said something about wanting Harrison to marry someone named Vanessa Hargrove, that it was what their parents intended. Dr. Patel nodded grimly. "The Hargroves are old money, major shareholders in Welltech. A marriage between the families would consolidate power significantly." The lab door opened, and Harrison entered, looking wary. "I saw Claire in the main building. Did she come down here?" "No," Imani said, quickly explaining what she had overheard. With each revelation, Harrison's expression darkened. "So it's true," he said when she finished. "Claire deliberately lied to keep us apart, and apparently has been planning to manipulate me into marrying Vanessa Hargrove all along." "We still need scientific confirmation," Dr. Patel cautioned, gesturing for Harrison to take the seat for his sample collection. "What you overheard is compelling, but we need proof," Imani agreed. "Hard evidence that can't be denied or manipulated." As Dr. Patel swabbed Harrison's cheek, the gravity of their situation settled over them. If Claire was willing to go to such lengths to separate them and push Harrison toward a strategic marriage, what else might she do when she discovered they knew the truth? "How soon can you have results?" Harrison asked as Dr. Patel sealed his sample. "With a rush analysis, by tomorrow morning. I'll do it myself, overnight if necessary." "Thank you," Imani said sincerely. "I know you're taking a risk by helping us." Dr. Patel's expression was solemn. "Science should serve truth, not agendas. Whatever your relationship turns out to be, you deserve to know the facts." As they prepared to leave separately, Harrison gently caught Imani's hand. "No matter what happens next," he said softly, "we face it together." She nodded, drawing strength from his touch even as she worried about the confrontation that surely lay ahead. Claire Wells had wealth, power, and apparently few scruples about using both to get what she wanted. The path to the truth wouldn't be easy or safe. Harrison insisted they stay at the hotel another night, concerned about returning to their homes when Claire clearly had resources tracking them. They ordered room service and spent the evening reviewing everything they'd learned, trying to piece together the full picture. Why would my sister go to such extremes? Harrison mused, staring out at the city skyline. Falsifying DNA tests? Possibly arranging my accident? All to push me toward marrying Vanessa Hargrove? It seems disproportionate, even for Claire's controlling tendencies. There must be something more at stake, Imani agreed. Something we're still missing. Harrison nodded slowly. The Welltech bylaws that Dr. Patel mentioned, about control shifting if I marry outside approved circles. I never paid much attention to them. They seemed like archaic provisions that would never apply in modern times. Maybe we should look at those bylaws more carefully. Harrison made a call to his personal attorney, careful to be vague about his reasons for needing the information. An hour later, they were reviewing the document, sent securely to Harrison's encrypted email. Here it is, Imani said, spotting the relevant section. If the CEO marries someone without appropriate social standing and heritage compatible with the Wells-Taylor legacy, control of the company shifts significantly to the next blood relative in the executive hierarchy. Which would be Claire, Harrison said grimly. She'd effectively control Welltech. But why does she need control? She's already COO. You two have always made decisions together, right? Harrison frowned, scrolling through more of the document. Wait, there's more. Further provisions regarding the protection of the Wells-Taylor bloodline and associated genetic advantages. He looked up, confused. What genetic advantages? That's strange phrasing for corporate bylaws, Imani observed. It sounds almost eugenics-like. They continued reading, finding increasingly bizarre references to maintaining genetic integrity and preserving the unique hereditary characteristics of the Wells-Taylor line. This reads more like a family cult manifesto than corporate governance, Harrison muttered. My father never mentioned anything like this. Could this be related to Dr. Thorne's research? The bloodline authentication movement the article mentioned? Harrison's phone buzzed, the prepaid one. It was a text from Dr. Patel. Initial results complete. Need to meet. Not safe to text details. My house, 7 a.m. They exchanged glances, both nervous and hopeful. Tomorrow they would know for certain. Sleep came more easily that night, despite the looming confrontation with Claire. Something about having each other, about facing this bizarre conspiracy together, provided comfort neither would have found alone. At 6:30 a.m. they left the hotel separately, taking different routes to Dr. Patel's house as a precaution. Imani arrived first, relieved to see no suspicious vehicles in the area. Harrison joined her minutes later, and Dr. Patel ushered them inside quickly. I have the results, she said without preamble, leading them to her dining room where folders and printouts were spread across the table. And as you suspected, the original test was falsified. You are not genetically related, not even distantly. Imani felt a rush of emotions, relief, vindication, and something else, something warm and hopeful that she hadn't allowed herself to fully acknowledge until this moment. Harrison reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. The touch sent electricity through her, no longer tainted by doubt or taboo. There's more, Dr. Patel continued. Once I established you weren't related, I looked deeper into Harrison's genetic markers, particularly those associated with the von Willebrand condition. I compared them with historical samples from the Taylor family database. And? Harrison prompted. And I found significant discrepancies. Harrison, your genetic markers don't align with the known Taylor family profile at all. You share the von Willebrand markers with your mother, but the other hereditary markers that should be present in a Taylor descendant are missing. Harrison frowned. What does that mean? It means you're not biologically a Taylor at all. Your maternal grandfather, the man you knew as your grandfather, was not your biological grandfather. The revelation hung in the air between them. Harrison looked stunned, trying to process yet another shock to his identity. This must be what Claire has been researching with Dr. Thorne, Imani realized. She discovered that your grandfather wasn't a biological tailor, which means the entire Taylor fortune and controlling interest in Welltech might not rightfully belong to the Wells family, Dr. Patel finished. If there are other legitimate Taylor descendants out there, they could potentially have claim to everything. Harrison ran a hand through his hair, visibly processing the implications. So Claire's desperate maneuvering, the falsified DNA tests between Imani and me pushing me toward Vanessa. It's all about protecting the Wells claim to the Taylor fortune and Welltech. Exactly, Dr. Patel confirmed. And if you were to marry and have children with someone like Imani, those children wouldn't have the genetic markers Claire needs to perpetuate the illusion of Taylor lineage, Imani concluded. Whereas children with Vanessa Hargrove, whose family has intermarried with branches of the Taylor family for generations, would continue to present the appropriate genetic profile for the Wells-Taylor bloodline, Dr. Patel said. It's quite calculating. Harrison's expression darkened. My entire life has been built on a lie, and Claire has known for months, keeping it from me while plotting to protect our family's claim to wealth that may not rightfully be ours. Before they could discuss further, the sound of car doors slamming outside caught their attention. Dr. Patel moved to the window, peeking cautiously through the blinds. "It's Claire," she whispered, face paling. "And she's not alone. There are men with her. Security personnel, I believe." Harrison moved quickly to Imani's side. "Is there another way out?" "The back door, through the kitchen," Dr. Patel replied, already gathering the test results into a folder. "Take these, I'll stall them." "Dr. Patel, this could be dangerous for you," Imani warned. "I'll be fine. Claire can't openly threaten a respected geneticist without raising questions. Go, quickly." They slipped out through the back, just as they heard knocking at the front door. Moving swiftly through the backyard, they vaulted a low fence into the neighboring property and made their way to where Harrison had parked his car several blocks away. "We need somewhere safe to regroup," Harrison said as they drove, constantly checking the rearview mirror for signs of pursuit. "Somewhere Claire wouldn't think to look." Imani thought for a moment. "I know a place. My mother's friend owns a cabin about an hour outside the city. She offered it to me after Mom died, said I could use it anytime I needed space to grieve." They stopped at a convenience store to buy burner phones, discarding their current ones, which might be tracked. Harrison withdrew cash from an ATM for the same reason, avoiding any electronic trail. The cabin was rustic but comfortable, nestled in woods beside a small lake. As they settled in, finally allowed themselves to process everything they'd learned and what it meant for them personally. "So we're definitely not related," Imani said softly, sitting beside Harrison on the worn sofa. "Not even distantly." "No, we're not." He took her hand, his thumb tracing gentle patterns on her skin. "Which means there's nothing wrong with how I feel about you. Nothing wrong with this." He leaned forward, hesitating just a breath away from her lips, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. She didn't. Instead, she closed the distance between them, kissing him with all the pent-up emotion of the past chaotic days. It felt right, more right than anything had felt in a long time. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Harrison rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that since the moment we discovered there might be a mistake in the test," he admitted. "Me too," she confessed, "even when I tried to convince myself I shouldn't." For a few precious moments they allowed themselves to simply be together, to take comfort in each other without the shadow of forbidden blood ties hanging over them. But reality couldn't be held at bay for long. "We need a plan," Imani said eventually. "Claire won't stop. If anything, she'll be more desperate now that she knows we've discovered the truth." Harrison nodded, his expression turning serious. "We need to confront her, but on our terms, with evidence she can't deny or dismiss. The DNA results alone won't be enough," Imani pointed out. "She'll claim they're flawed or manipulated just as she did with the originals." "You're right. Harrison stood, pacing the small living room. We need more. Something that proves her deliberate deception. Her knowledge that I'm not a Taylor descendant, her involvement with Dr. Thorne. Maybe we can speak with Dr. Thorne directly? If we can convince him that what Claire is doing is wrong, it's worth trying. But first, I want to understand more about these genetic advantages mentioned in the bylaws. Harrison's expression grew troubled. There's something about all this that feels planned, as if my parents, maybe even my grandparents, knew about the non-Taylor paternity and deliberately concealed it. But why? What could be so important about maintaining the illusion of Taylor ancestry? Harrison shook his head. I don't know, but I intend to find out. As they continued brainstorming, Harrison's new burner phone rang, an unexpected development since they hadn't shared the number with anyone. Cautiously, he answered on speaker. Mr. Wells. The voice was familiar, the mysterious man who had approached Imani in the park. I see you've discovered the truth about your lineage, or at least part of it. Who are you? Harrison demanded. How did you get this number? Let's just say I have resources and a vested interest in your situation. The man's tone was calm, almost amused. If you want to understand the real reason Claire is so desperate to maintain the Wells-Taylor fiction, you need to look beyond simple inheritance. The truth is in the medical research division, Project Prometheus. Project Prometheus? Harrison repeated, confused. I've never heard of it. Because it's been hidden from you deliberately. Claire isn't just protecting wealth, Mr. Wells. She's protecting a secret that makes your family's fortune look insignificant by comparison. Who are you? Imani asked. Why are you helping us? A pause. Let's just say I have personal reasons for wanting the truth to come out. Look into Project Prometheus. And be very careful. Now that Claire knows you're aware of your non-Taylor heritage, she'll be more dangerous than ever. The call ended abruptly. Harrison and Imani exchanged troubled glances. Project Prometheus, Harrison murmured. It sounds familiar, but I can't place it. Can you access Welltech's secure servers remotely? Imani asked. Not from here, not safely. But I know someone who might be able to help us. Harrison dialed another number on the burner phone. Marcus, it's Harrison. I need your help with something sensitive. Very sensitive. Can you meet us? As he arranged a meeting with his most trusted IT director, Imani gazed out the cabin window at the peaceful lake, knowing that their brief respite was coming to an end. Whatever Project Prometheus was, it seemed to be at the heart of Claire's desperate actions, and they were about to dive straight into the center of the mystery. Marcus Chen, Welltech's head of cybersecurity, met them at a truck stop diner 50 miles outside the city. An unlikely location for the professionally dressed man with wire-rimmed glasses, but perfect for their needs. Anonymous, busy enough to mask conversation, yet not so crowded that they risked being overheard. This is about as off-grid as I get, Marcus said after Harrison made the introductions. Now, what's so urgent that my CEO is hiding out with a burner phone? Harrison gave him a heavily edited version of events. Problems with Claire, concerns about unauthorized research, the need to access information about something called Project Prometheus. Marcus's expression grew increasingly troubled. Project Prometheus isn't just classified, Harrison. It's ghost-level restricted. Even with my clearance, I've only heard whispers. But you have heard something, Imani pressed gently. Marcus glanced around the diner before lowering his voice. It's a genetic research initiative started decades ago by your grandfather, or rather, the man you thought was your grandfather. Something about unique markers in the Taylor bloodline. What kind of unique markers? Harrison asked. That's where it gets murky. The project's been compartmentalized across multiple divisions, each working on pieces without seeing the whole. But there's a dedicated facility, Sub-Level 3 at the Harborview Research Complex. Access is restricted to family-only biometrics. Meaning Claire and me, Harrison concluded. Marcus nodded. And your parents before they died. Can you get us in there? Imani asked. Not electronically. The system's air-gapped, no external network access, but Marcus hesitated. I might be able to help you bypass the physical security. It's risky, though. If Claire discovers I'm involved, I'll protect you, Harrison promised. Whatever happens, your job is safe. Marcus smiled grimly. It's not my job I'm worried about, but I'll help. Give me until tonight to prepare. As Marcus outlined what they would need, Imani couldn't shake the feeling that they were approaching something far bigger and darker than they had imagined. What secret was worth the elaborate deception Claire had constructed? Worth attempting murder? Back at the cabin, while waiting for Marcus's preparations, Harrison received another call on the burner phone. Mr. Wells, I understand you're looking into Project Prometheus. It was the mysterious informant again. How do you know that? Harrison demanded. I have my sources. Are you familiar with the concept of genetic chimerism? Vaguely, Imani answered, her nursing background providing some context. It's a rare condition where someone has two sets of DNA in their body. Precisely. Now imagine this condition, but engineered, deliberately created. The man's voice took on an urgent quality. The Taylor family didn't just get rich through typical business ventures. They funded extensive genetic research in the early 20th century, research that would be considered highly unethical today. What kind of research? Harrison asked, though his expression suggested he was beginning to suspect the answer. They were obsessed with creating superhumans, people with enhanced immunity, extended longevity, superior physical and mental capabilities. Project Prometheus was their attempt to perfect and control these genetic advantages. That sounds like science fiction, Imani said skeptically. 50 years ago, perhaps. Not anymore. The man paused. Why do you think the Wells-Taylor bloodline is so carefully protected? Why the family has strict rules about who can marry whom? It's not about wealth or social standing, Ms. Washington. It's about genetics. Harrison's face had gone pale. Are you suggesting my family has been involved in some kind of genetic engineering program for generations? Not suggesting, confirming. And you, Mr. Wells, are one of their success stories. Have you ever wondered why you heal faster than normal? Why you've never had a serious illness? Why your cognitive abilities test in the top 0.1 percentile? Harrison looked stunned. How could you possibly know that? Because I've been watching the Taylor experiments for decades. I've seen the successes and the failures. The man's voice grew somber. Your accident wasn't an accident, Mr. Wells. It was a test, orchestrated by Claire to assess your physical resilience. You weren't meant to die, just to demonstrate your enhanced recovery capabilities. That's insane, Imani protested. Claire wouldn't endanger her brother. I understand your skepticism, but Project Prometheus has warped the moral compass of everyone involved with it. The potential applications are too valuable, too world-changing. If what you're saying is true, Harrison said slowly, why tell us? What's your stake in this? A long pause. Because I was one of their first successful subjects, and because your mother, your biological mother, was my daughter. The revelation landed like a physical blow. Harrison gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white. What are you saying? Your maternal grandfather wasn't just not a Taylor. He was me, Elias Wright. I worked for the Taylor Research Division in the 1960s. They used my genetic material without consent, combined with Taylor DNA to create several embryos. Your mother was one of those embryos, raised as a Taylor with no knowledge of her true origins. I can't. Harrison struggled to process the information. I know it's overwhelming, but you'll find the proof in the Prometheus files. Claire knows the truth. She's known for years. It's why she's so desperate to maintain the fiction of Taylor lineage, to keep controlling the genetic research that's worth billions in potential medical applications. And my accident? Harrison asked, his voice strained. You're saying my own sister arranged it to test my enhanced healing? Yes, but there's something she didn't anticipate. Your connection with Ms. Washington. You see, Imani's mother was also part of the program, though in a different capacity. Imani's heart skipped a beat. My mother? What are you talking about? Eleanor Taylor Washington was a research assistant at one of the Taylor laboratories in the 1980s. She discovered the truth about the genetic experiments and tried to expose them. That's why William Taylor was forced to abandon her, not because of racism, though that was the convenient public explanation. The Taylors couldn't risk her exposing their secret research. Imani's mind reeled, remembering her mother's journal entry. The Taylors would destroy us both. It hadn't just been about social standing, it had been about silencing her. When did you learn all this? Harrison asked the man who claimed to be his biological grandfather. I've been piecing it together for decades, but I only confirmed my relationship to you recently through DNA samples I acquired from Welltech's database. I've been trying to expose the truth for years, but the Taylor-Wells influence is too extensive. They've buried every attempt. Until now, Harrison said grimly. Until now. With you, the CEO, a success story of their own program, and Ms. Washington, whose mother tried to expose them, working together, you might finally bring the truth to light. As the call ended, Harrison and Imani sat in stunned silence, trying to process the cascade of revelations. Do you believe him? Imani finally asked. Harrison ran a hand through his hair. I don't know. It sounds incredible, like something from a science fiction novel. But it would explain a lot, Imani finished. The obsession with genetic lineage, the strange provisions in the company bylaws, Claire's extreme measures. We need to see the Prometheus files for ourselves, Harrison decided. Tonight. Marcus's plan was precise and methodical. With his help remotely disabling certain security protocols, Harrison and Imani could access the subterranean research facility using Harrison's biometric credentials. The risk was substantial. If caught, Harrison could lose everything, and both might face criminal charges. But the need for truth outweighed the danger. They entered Welltech's Harborview complex at 2 a.m., using Harrison's executive access card. Following Marcus's instructions, they avoided the main elevators, instead taking a service lift to the lower levels. The corridors were deserted, emergency lights casting long shadows as they made their way to a nondescript door marked only with P3. Harrison pressed his palm to the scanner, his face illuminated by the green glow of the biometric reader. For a tense moment, nothing happened. Then, with a soft hiss, the door unlocked. Inside was a laboratory unlike any Imani had seen. Cutting-edge equipment, cryogenic storage units, and walls of data servers. But what caught her attention immediately were the illuminated display cases lining one wall, each containing what appeared to be historical medical specimens and documents. My God, Harrison whispered, approaching the displays. These records go back to the 1920s. They moved through the lab, piecing together the story told by the exhibits and documentation. The Taylor family, led by Harrison's great-grandfather, had indeed been involved in genetic research long before such work was commonplace. Initially focused on understanding why certain family members displayed unusual longevity and disease resistance, the research had evolved into something more deliberate, actual genetic manipulation. Look at this, Imani said, examining a document from the 1960s. They were combining Taylor genetic material with samples from subjects selected for specific traits, intelligence, physical endurance, disease immunity, creating embryos and placing them with Taylor family members or close associates. A breeding program, Harrison said, his voice hollow. My own family was running a human breeding program. As they delved deeper into the digital archives, Marcus guiding them remotely through the security systems, the full scope of Project Prometheus emerged. The Taylor genetic line had natural mutations that conferred significant advantages: enhanced cellular regeneration, resistance to most diseases, and cognitive function that consistently tested above average. The project had sought to amplify these traits through selective breeding and later direct genetic modification. They were creating superhumans, Imani whispered, or trying to. And apparently succeeding, Harrison added grimly, pulling up his own medical file. The data was unambiguous. His healing abilities were dramatically above normal human baseline, his immune system virtually impenetrable to common diseases, his cognitive processing speed and capacity far beyond standard measures. He was, in every measurable way, enhanced. But what truly chilled them both was the section labeled Generation Next, Claire's plan for a new phase of the project. It detailed the genetic compatibility of various potential partners for Harrison, rating them on how well their DNA would complement the engineered Taylor traits. Vanessa Hargrove topped the list, her genetic profile carefully selected to maximize the desired outcomes in offspring. "She was trying to breed me like a prize stallion," Harrison said, disgust evident in his voice. "And when you came into the picture, someone not in their carefully curated genetic pool. I became a threat," Imani finished. "Or rather, our potential children did, because they wouldn't follow the Prometheus blueprint." As they continued searching, they found what they were looking for: evidence of Claire's direct knowledge and involvement. Emails, research notes, meeting recordings, all confirming what their mysterious informant had claimed. Claire had indeed arranged Harrison's accident as a controlled test of his enhanced healing capabilities, carefully engineered to cause significant but non-fatal injuries. "I need to copy all of this," Harrison said, inserting a drive Marcus had provided. "We need irrefutable proof." As the files transferred, Imani discovered another disturbing folder, one labeled Elimination Protocols. Inside were detailed contingency plans for dealing with subjects who threatened the program's secrecy, including something disturbingly labeled Washington E. Neutralized 1987. "Harrison," she called, her voice shaking, I think they did something to my mother." Before she could elaborate, the lab's lights suddenly shifted to red. An alarm began to sound, and the computer screens locked simultaneously. "Security breach detected," announced an automated voice. "Containment protocols initiated." "We need to go, now," Harrison said, grabbing the drive. "Marcus, what's happening?" Through their earpieces, Marcus's voice came through, tight with tension. "Someone else accessed the system. I couldn't block them. You've got about 2 minutes before security reaches you." They raced for the exit, but as they reached the door, it clicked locked. The security override had sealed them in. "There's another way out," Harrison said, pulling Imani toward an emergency exit at the far end of the lab, through the maintenance tunnels. As they ran, the truth they'd uncovered weighed heavily on them both. Project Prometheus wasn't just a family secret, it was a decades-long program of genetic experimentation that had shaped both their lives in ways they were only beginning to understand. And now, with the alarms blaring and security closing in, they faced a desperate race to escape with the evidence before Claire could silence them, permanently. The maintenance tunnels were a labyrinth of pipes and conduits, dimly lit by emergency lighting. Harrison led the way, his familiarity with Welltech's blueprints guiding them through the maze while the sounds of security teams echoed behind them. "This should lead to the loading docks," he whispered, helping Imani climb over a large ventilation duct. "If we can reach my car, you won't," came Claire's voice from the shadows ahead. She stepped into view, flanked by 2 security guards. Her normally perfect appearance was disheveled, her eyes wild with a combination of anger and fear. "How did you find us?" Harrison demanded, instinctively moving in front of Imani. "I've had tracking protocols on your biometric access for weeks. Did you really think I wouldn't notice when you entered Prometheus?" Claire's laugh was brittle. "I've been monitoring your every move since the accident." "Since you arranged to have me nearly killed, you mean?" Harrison countered, his voice hard. "We know everything, Claire. About Project Prometheus, about our grandfather Elias Wright, about what you've been planning for me and Vanessa Hargrove." Claire's expression faltered briefly before hardening again. "You have no idea what's really at stake. This goes beyond you and me, beyond Welltech. The Prometheus protocols could change humanity's future. By creating genetically engineered superhumans?" Imani challenged. "By manipulating people's lives without their consent? By advancing human evolution?" Claire snapped. "Disease resistance, extended lifespans, enhanced cognition. The applications are limitless. The suffering we could alleviate, the problems we could solve with minds like Harrison's." She gestured at her brother. "You've benefited from these manipulations your entire life. Never a serious illness, injuries that would cripple others healing in days, cognitive abilities that built a tech empire." "That doesn't justify what you've done," Harrison said. "Arranging my accident, lying about Imani and me being related. I did what was necessary to protect the project. Your relationship with her threatened everything." Claire's gaze shifted to Imani, contemptuous. "Her mother nearly exposed us 35 years ago. I couldn't let history repeat itself." A chill ran through Imani. "What did you do to my mother?" Something shifted in Claire's expression, a flash of genuine regret, quickly suppressed. "Eleanor Washington discovered files similar to what you found tonight. She threatened to go public. The family handled it." "Handled it?" Imani repeated, her voice shaking. "What does that mean?" "They didn't kill her, if that's what you're thinking, but they made sure she'd never be believed, staged a mental breakdown, had her briefly institutionalized. After that, who would take her conspiracy theories seriously?" Claire smiled thinly. "They even made it look like she'd been drinking on the job. No hospital would hire her in a position where she'd have access to sensitive information again. That's why she bounced from job to job, always in lower positions than her qualifications deserved." Fury rose in Imani as the pieces fell into place. Her mother's mysterious breakdown, the sudden job changes, the whispers that had followed them from city to city. You destroyed her career, her reputation. "It was merciful considering the alternatives," Claire replied coldly. "And now, here you are, following in her footsteps, threatening everything we've built." "What exactly is your plan here, Claire?" Harrison asked, his voice steady despite the tension. "You can't just make us disappear." "No, but I can discredit you. The CEO having a mental health crisis, becoming paranoid with wild conspiracy theories after a traumatic brain injury. The board would have no choice but to remove you." Claire gestured to the guards. "Take them to the containment room. I need to make some calls." The guards advanced, but Harrison stood his ground. "Before you do that, you should know that we've already sent copies of the Prometheus files to multiple secure locations. If anything happens to us, if I'm suddenly declared mentally unfit, those files go public." Claire hesitated, uncertainty flickering across her face. "You're bluffing. Are you willing to take that chance? To risk exposing nearly a century of illegal genetic experimentation? The lawsuits would destroy Welltech. The Taylor name would become synonymous with eugenics and human rights violations." The standoff stretched, tension crackling in the air. Then, unexpectedly, one of the guards lowered his weapon. "Ms. Wells, I can't be part of this," he said, stepping back. "Detaining the CEO? Covering up genetic experiments? This is beyond what I signed up for." Claire whirled on him, furious. "You signed non-disclosure agreements. Your career, your future, aren't worth this," the guard finished, removing his security badge and dropping it at her feet. The second guard, after a moment's hesitation, followed suit. Alone and outnumbered, Claire's composure finally cracked. "You don't understand what you're doing. The Prometheus protocols aren't just about creating superior humans. They're the only defense against what's coming." "What are you talking about?" Harrison asked. "Climate collapse, antibiotic-resistant pandemics, resource wars. Humanity is facing extinction-level threats, and the enhanced genetic profiles we've developed are our only insurance policy." Claire's voice had taken on a desperate quality. Yes, the methods were questionable, but the goal was survival, human survival. "That decision isn't yours to make," Imani said firmly. "Playing God with people's genetics, deciding who gets these advantages and who doesn't, that's not salvation, it's eugenics." "She's right," Harrison added. "If these genetic advances can truly help humanity, they should be developed ethically, transparently, and made available to everyone, not just the privileged few in the Taylor-Wells orbit." Claire looked between them, seeing the resolute determination in their faces. Something in her seemed to deflate, the fight draining away. "You're naive, both of you. The world doesn't work that way." "Maybe it should," Harrison replied, "and maybe it's time someone tried to make it so." In the tense quiet that followed, a new voice broke in through their earpieces. "Marcus." "Harrison, Imani, I've got a situation up here. Someone bypassed my security protocols. There's another player involved." Before they could respond, the tunnel door behind Claire burst open. A tall, elderly man entered, accompanied by federal agents in tactical gear. "Elias Wright," Harrison breathed, recognizing the man from photos they'd seen in the Prometheus files. "Hello, grandson," Wright said, his lined face solemn. "And you must be Eleanor's daughter," he added, nodding to Imani. "Federal agents?" Claire sputtered. "How did you—" "I've been building this case for decades," Wright explained. "Gathering evidence, cultivating contacts in federal agencies, waiting for the right moment. When Harrison and Imani began investigating, I knew the time had finally come." "You're under arrest, Ms. Wells," one of the agents announced, approaching Claire with handcuffs. "Conspiracy, attempted murder, illegal genetic experimentation. The list is quite extensive." As Claire was led away, her final glance at Harrison held a complex mixture of emotions, anger, fear, but also something like grudging respect. "You're more like our parents than I thought," she said quietly, "always believing the best was possible. I hope you're right." In the days that followed, the full scope of Project Prometheus was carefully revealed to select authorities. Harrison, working with Elias Wright and a team of ethical geneticists, developed a plan to responsibly research the beneficial genetic markers without the manipulative and non-consensual aspects of the original program. "The healing factors alone could revolutionize medicine," Wright explained during one of their planning sessions. "And if we can isolate the disease resistance markers, develop them into treatments available to everyone, we could save millions of lives," Imani finished. She had taken a leave of absence from the hospital to help coordinate the medical ethics aspects of the new research initiative. But this time, with full transparency and consent. As for Claire, her cooperation with authorities led to a reduced sentence. The public story was carefully managed. Welltech announced breakthrough genetic research while downplaying the historical aspects, focusing instead on the potential benefits to humanity. On a personal level, Harrison and Imani's relationship deepened amid the storm of revelations and changes. One evening, 6 months after their discovery in the Prometheus lab, they sat on the dock at Imani's mother's friend's cabin, watching the sunset over the lake. "I've been thinking about something Claire said," Harrison mused, his fingers intertwined with Imani's. "About me being like our parents, always believing the best was possible. Do you think she was right? In a way. But I think that's what humanity needs. People who believe in possibility, who think we can do better." He turned to face her fully. "I want to do better, Imani. With Welltech, with the genetic research, with everything." "You already are," she said softly. "We both are." Harrison reached into his pocket, pulling out a small box. "I had this made," he said, opening it to reveal a ring with a simple emerald. Not a family heirloom this time. Something new, untainted by the past. Imani's breath caught. "Harrison, I know it's soon. We've been through more in months than most couples face in years, but I've never been more certain of anything." His eyes held hers. "Imani Washington, will you marry me?" Not because of genetics or family legacies or corporate bylaws, just because I love you and I want to build something new with you. Tears shimmered in Imani's eyes as she nodded. Yes, she whispered. Yes. As they sealed the promise with a kiss, both were keenly aware of the journey that had brought them to this moment, from a trauma bay where she had saved his life, through a labyrinth of family secrets and genetic mysteries, to this quiet shore where they were choosing their own future. They had discovered that the greatest inheritance wasn't in DNA or corporate empires, but in the courage to face truth and the strength to forge new paths. Their children would carry forward not just unique genetic markers, but the values their parents had fought for: honesty, justice, and the belief that science should serve humanity, not control it. Elias Wright, watching from the cabin porch, smiled at the sight of the embracing couple. He thought of his daughter, of all the lives manipulated by Project Prometheus, and felt a profound sense of closure. The truth had finally emerged, and with it, the chance for healing. A new dawn was breaking, not just for Harrison and Imani, but for all those who would benefit from the genetic discoveries, now guided by ethical hands. The twisted legacy of the Taylor-Wells lineage was transforming into something unexpected: hope. As night fell over the lake, stars reflected in the still water, mirroring the infinite possibilities that stretched before them, a future of their own design, unwritten by anyone but themselves. If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time. Just click on the screen